Welcome back to Genshin Interact. Today, we're introducing a new series of videos discussing 4-star characters in Genshin Impact. In today's 4-star discussion video, we'll be highlighting Kirara, her kit, and how she can benefit your account.
The first thing we're going to be talking about with Kirara is her normal attacks, elemental skill, her burst, looking at her talents and what she can really do. So first, we're going to be talking about her normal attack. This is not something that you're really going to want to focus on, considering she doesn't scale off of it. She's not a real damage dealer with her normal attacks. Her elemental skill and her elemental burst are going to be what you're going to want to focus on. Her skill is going to allow her to throw up a shield, and its damage absorption is going to be based on Kirara's max HP. Most of everything on her kit is going to be based off max HP, so keep that in mind when building her. This also has a hold state that allows you to go into a shield of transport state that'll kind of allow you to go into this little delivery box with a cat in it, and in this state she'll have higher movement speed, climbing speed, and jumping power increase, as well as her stamina consumption will be increased as well. When the duration of this ends, or if she uses the skill again, she'll unleash a Flip Claw strike that'll be a little bit more powerful than the press mode in the previous part of the skill. And then also just know that if you're going to sprint while in this state, it will cancel the state out. The longer you're in this hold skill, the longer your cooldown is going to be. Looking at her burst though, it's actually similar to Klee's burst. She'll be throwing out this huge, what she's calling a special delivery package, and it's going to be an AoE of Dendro damage, and once it hits or explodes, it's going to split into many different explosions and little things that will contact opponents after a period of time, which will deal more AoE Dendro damage. Looking beyond her talents, Rift, what can you tell us about her passives?
Yeah, so looking at Kirara's passives, her first passive is called Bewitching Betwitching Tails. And this basically just states that when Kirara is in the urgent nego parcel state of her Meteor Kick in her skill, each impact against an opponent grants her a stack of reinforced packaging. You can trigger this effect once for each opponent she hits every 0.5 seconds, for a maximum of 3 stacks. When the urgent nego parcel state ends, each stack of reinforced packaging creates 1 shield of safe transport for Kirara. The shields created this way have 20% of the damage absorption that the shield of safe transport produced by her skill would have. So it's only a fifth as powerful, but it still is pretty helpful, especially if you've built her high into the HP and make her shield pretty strong. That being said, if Kirara is already protected by a shield created by her skill, its damage absorption will actually stack with these shields, and the duration also resets. And then looking at her second passive, it's called Pupillary Variance. Every 1,000 max health points Kirara possesses will increase the damage of her skill, Meteor Kick, by 0.4%, and also the damage of her burst by 0.3%. Her third passive, and this one's kind of unique, Cat's Creeping Carriage. This basically says that when Kirara's in the party, any type of animals in the overworld like boars or birds that produce foul, raw meat, and even chilled meat from the special boars in Dragonspine, they will not be startled when you approach them when Kirara is in the party, much like Sayu and Yaoyao with crystal flies. But moving on from passives, we're going to look at some possible weapons that Kirara can take use of. And so, Vixen, what can you tell us about that?
Well, looking at weapons, the best sword for her is probably going to be Key of Kajni Suit. This weapon specifically is going to be increasing HP percent as its main stat, and then the skill on it will be increasing HP even more, giving those elemental skill hits an effect that increases elemental mastery based on HP. This can help her do a little bit of extra damage on field, possibly as well off field, depending on what she's going to be doing. Some other weapons that might be good for her are going to be maybe like Sapwood Blade if you need a little bit more energy recharge. We'll talk about artifacts later, whether or not you're going to need more energy or if you're going to do a little bit more HP with some crit. But looking at the 4 stars, since we don't have an HP percent main stat, the energy weapons are probably going to be best for you. Sapwood Blade's the first 4-star we're going to look at for Kirara, and that's going to be helping energy recharge. When you're triggering any Dendro reaction, this is going to be creating a leaf of consciousness around Kirara. When picking this up, Kirara will get 60 elemental mastery for 12 seconds. This is going to be helping her just similar to Key of Kajin Suit, giving her a little bit of elemental mastery to help her do a little bit more damage on field, as well as, helping those reactions do more damage. Favonia's Sword is another 4-star that we think is going to be pretty good for her, considering it's going to be helping the energy recharge. Then with the crit hits, having a certain percentage to generate a small amount of the elemental particles, which will be white particles, which will be good for all party members, depending on who's on field and who's off field. It'll be giving everybody on the team more energy. Another 4-star weapon that could be used is Sacrificial Sword. This is going to be helping if you want maybe more skills out to help more with the idea of energy with the main stat, but also helping getting your skill back so that you can have as much shield as possible. Now, looking beyond weapons, Rift, what can you tell us about the different artifact sets that might be useful for Kirara?
There are 3 in question that we theoretically think will be pretty good for her, and namely those are Tenacity of the Millilith, Vorakasha's Glow, and Retracing Bolide. Looking at Tenacity, the 2-piece obviously is going to help a lot with her HP scaling. This is going to help with her shield, but also her damage, since her damage does scale pretty nicely on HP. And for the 4-piece effect, this is going to again help because it's going to give her a lot of shield strength, as well as giving your other party members 20% attack. So this is a very valuable set to use on someone like Kirara, kind of similar to how Yaoyao may be played. If you use Tenacity on Yaoyao, if you're not using her for Deepwood, it's a very similar playstyle there. If instead you don't want to run the 4-piece Tenacity on Kirara, maybe you just don't want to grind it, or you don't have the right pieces, you're not getting the right pieces, you can also mix and match some 2-piece sets on Kirara to make her shield very powerful and very valuable. Those 2-piece sets that you can also use, you can use Vorakasha's Glow, which also has an HP 2-piece. Again, that's to help her shield. You can also use 2-piece Tenacity if you have kind of half farmed that and you have some good pieces for that. There's also Retracing Bolide. This 2-piece will help with the shield strength by 35%. And so this is going to be a very good option to go with if you don't want to go fully into a 4-piece set with Tenacity. Now that we've talked about some of the sets you can use on Kirara, Vixen, what can you tell me about maybe some of the main stats to look for, and what kind of substats would I want for my Kirara?
Well, the main stats you're going to be looking at, obviously, your Sands, your Goblet, and your Circlet. Looking at your main stats, you're going to be trying to figure out what you really need, and it's going to depend a lot on your weapon. If you're running Favonia's Sword, you're going to want a lot more crit rate, and you're going to want to keep as much HP in her kit as possible, like we talked about, because this is going to help her damage absorption on her shields, as well as damage just in general. So first, if you are not running Favonia's Sword, then we suggest using ER as the main stat for your Sands, HP main stat on the Goblet, and HP main stat on the Circlet. This will help you give a lot more energy and get her burst back a lot easier, and helping you do a lot more damage in general, as well as getting as much Dendro application out on the field. If you are using Favonia's Sword, run HP % on her Sands, run HP % on her Goblet, and run a crit rate Circlet. This will allow the ability on the Favonia's Sword to give you more particles since you'll have a higher crit rate. This will mean that you'll give everybody on the party even more energy. Usually, if you want to run this weapon and this type of build, we suggest that, the team is looking to get their burst back. If the team isn't burst heavy, then Favonia's Sword doesn't necessarily help too much with this ability. Now, if you only have Favonia's Sword and you like the ER main stat of it, and you really are just and if you're not really using the ability at all, then you can kind of focus on using an ER Sand still and not really focus on the crit rate at all. Now that we've looked at the artifact main stats, let's look at the artifact substats. We're going to be talking about keeping as much HP on these character as possible. Kirara really focuses on it, so on that ER Sands and that crit rate Circlet, try to get as much HP % on there as possible. The next substat to look at on the other HP % main stat things that you're going to be using, try looking for as much ER as possible. You can look a little bit for attack and crit rate, crit damage if you're looking for damage, and elemental mastery if you're really trying to get as much reactions on the team as possible. Going beyond stats, we now take a look at material. What is Kirara going to be needing, Rip?
Yeah, so for you people out there who maybe want to kind of save up on materials before Kirara does release in a few hours, looking at her ascension, getting her actual level up and getting her to level 90 if you want to do that, you should be farming Evergloom Rings, which can be found by fighting the Iniquitous Baptist boss in the desert. Of course, as a Dendro unit, she's going to be taking the Emerald Slivers, Chunks, and Gemstones, as well as Amakumo fruit from Serai Island, and the enemy you should be farming, in addition to all of that, are Specters, for the spectral husks they drop. Looking at Kirara's talents, you'll want to farm the Books of Transience. When you do get her skills leveled up to 6, and you're going to look at getting to 7 and 8 and 9 and also crowning if you so desire, you'll want to stock up on Ever Ambers, which can be found by fighting the new Dendro Dragon that recently released.
Now we're going to be looking at the different teams that Kirara can be put into. The first and probably the easiest one to think about is going to be a Bloom team. Her entire kit really seems to be helping this, although she does seem like an on-field character, so if you have characters like Nilou or Nahida, they can be on-field. You're probably going to be looking to build them and kind of focus on them to be off-field. Nilou having a certain way to use her skill to be off-field, as well as keeping Nahida's skill, obviously, in her burst, helping Kirara on-field as much as possible. Kirara can be the on-field character. She doesn't really have too many things really going on with her skill and burst, I think, to really help off-field help on a Bloom team. Rift, what can you tell us, maybe your thoughts on maybe a Bloom team for Kirara and her placement in it?
Yeah, I could see her being pretty good for a Bloom team just because as a shield unit, obviously shielding your other characters, kind of protecting them from the Bloom explosions, I can see that definitely being very viable, especially kind of like maybe you don't have Baizhu, and I can see Kirara kind of being a budget Baizhu, maybe obviously not healing, but kind of with the shield aspect. So it's kind of like a different version of Yaoyao, where Yaoyao strictly heals and Kirara strictly gives shields. So I feel like if you combine both of them, you get Baizhu, right? That's kind of the feeling I'm getting there. So that's definitely going to be a lot of fun to kind of try out and see what she's going to be good for. But yeah, definitely Bloom. I also see her just being good really for any Dendro-related reaction team. Just because Dendro is just always going to be reaction heavy. It always has been, liking to base itself on elemental mastery. So any Dendro team, I feel like she's just going to be a good flex character to use. If maybe you're not having a healer, you're kind of using a more offensive team, and Kirara can kind of help with the shielding on that. What do you think about that, Vixen?
I totally agree. I really think that she could even help teams like Hyper Bloom to make sure that the Bloom cores are staying on field with things that she has going on, as well as characters like Raiden and Kuki that are great for Hyper Bloom can be off field. Raiden with her skill as well as Kuki with her skill can stay off field, which means that Kirara can stay on field while keeping the other characters like Xingqiu or Yelan to produce the blooms with Kirara, as well as an extra character to help with the bloom as well, either a Dendro or a Hydro. I think that she'll probably fit well in that team as well. Looking at maybe some Virgin teams as well, you never know. But I think we're never really going to know until she's out. So in the next little bit, maybe we'll find out, and maybe you guys will too.
And again, as with any Dendro-related team, this is optional, this isn't required, but it is a good idea to just make sure maybe you have at least someone in the team, using Deepwood Memories. Going to greatly increase any type of Dendro damage you're dealing. It's kind of like if you use any team, before Dendro came out, any team that has an Animo support in it, the play to go is using Viridescent Venerer, right? And so I kind of see that's the Dendro side of things, where when you're doing a Dendro team, you want to use Deepwood. And that's just something to think about. Again, that's optional, but that will definitely help your Dendro numbers. So this is just something to keep in mind when you use a Dendro team, just to maybe throw in Deepwood Memories. That way you're upping your Dendro numbers. So that's just something to think about.
That will end Kirara's discussion video. Let us know in the comments if you'll be going after her. If you have her already, let us know how she's impacted your account, both positively or maybe negatively. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.